years, as I said, Camelot has been in operation. 4 years of that, I had a partner, Bill Ryan. We split up after the first 4 years, and then since the last 4.5 years, I've been working on Camelot on my own. Bill went on to Project Avalon, as some of you may know. He has a forum, and he actually sort of moved to Ecuador and has been living there with his, I believe, his wife. So anyway, so that's what's happening, and we're also getting testimony right now, for those of you who've been to my site recently, about possible solar flares, possible EMP event like you heard Dan Sherman talk about all those years ago. He was trained to be one of the intuitive communicators, and his book, he's got a whole book that he wrote about his experience in the military. He did leave the military, and my interview with him is actually stellar. If you haven't seen it, then I really want to encourage you to do so, because this man is quite an impeccable witness. He's the kind of witness that, we all love to have. It's just a straightforward guy who is just not, no frills, and just telling you, like it is, and not looking for fame or fortune or any of that nonsense. So, so you really should listen to that interview with Dan Sherman, talking about, being trained in the military to talk to ETs, basically, using a computer initially. Although he was an intuitive, and it appears that he was also bioengineered, so to speak. Genetically altered in his mother's womb, and there was evidence that he got from a senior officer telling him this. So that's what we're talking about. We're really talking about we're on the verge of unveiling. This is all happening now, and I can imagine that many of you are here because you recognize that, and you yourselves are experiencing various things in this area. So there's a lot more going on. I do have a new witness that I interviewed I was at the Bases conference last week, and he was there. He is a bodyguard who was a bodyguard for Sitchin and a few famous people. He's talking about some sources of his, and he's got some high-level sources here in England, as well as in the military in various places, who are telling him there's going to be an EMP event. Now that's significant, not because I'm an enthusiast of EMP events. I'm obviously not, but I do think warning people is something you should do. And let me just grab this because I can't figure it out. But anyway, and so it's important that that people understand that when people come forward to Camelot, and when we choose to interview somebody.
We just unsure what an EMP event is.
Oh, electromagnetic pulse event. And that was shown in the video here. You saw the lights going out in the United States. So that's, yeah, it's an electromagnetic EM. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Who's going to create that?
Well, actually, we have not only this guy who's coming forward now and with his back channel sources, but then I interviewed prior to him Simon Parkes. Many people will know him, but he's a counselor here in the UK who's come forward on various subjects in the past. But my interview, let me say, kind of goes a step further than he's gone in the past. And I believe that it's a lot more sobering than, sort of having sex with a cat woman or something, you know what I'm saying? In other words, that sounds exotic, whether it's true or it's not true, but the bottom line is that person, Simon Parkes, that I met, is a very serious individual, and do not be deceived by what he is saying out there. This is what's happening. So you want to know how it's going to happen or who's going to do it. It is said to be it will be an inside job. Probably, the United States, part of the New World Order, whatever, doing it to the United States with a purpose in mind. My understanding is it won't be as long lasting as they'd like it to be, that it will only be something like a 1 or 2 week event. I know that there are some people out there talking about this. Henry Deacon, who came out under his own name, which is Arthur Neumann, who is one of the top Camelot witnesses through all the 8 years that we've been interviewing people. We got to know him, you could even say perhaps better than anyone else. And he has also had to endure the most, well, a great deal of personal, let's say, a pressure and coercion from the powers that be behind channels. He has now gone to ground again and has been under the radar for quite some time, although about a year and a few months ago, I did a conference in California. It was on time travel, and they did try to take it down, all the organization that was involved and so on and so forth. My partner disappeared, and all this weirdness went on. But we managed to carry it out, and it is now available to stream. Each speaker is something ridiculous, like $5 to stream like a 2-hour presentation of the top people talking about time travel and its relationship to this whole story that we're all involved in at this time. Key, time travel is key. At any rate, Henry Deacon was there on stage, and ultimately I went on stage and was interviewing him. He talked a lot about his experiences working on Mars and traveling through a jump gate to and from Mars on a regular basis. So, and this guy is a scientist. That is his background. He, again, is not looking for fame or fortune. In fact, he makes no money whatsoever. He's pretty much destitute and has been since we've known him. He lives on a small government, pension thing that they give you. And so this is what we're really looking at. You have to see that these witnesses are, that we've chosen to bring to you, not to say that everything they tell you is the truth, and that's a whole different matter. And I'm getting ahead of myself here because I'm, I tend to do that when I'm enthusiastic about my subject, I guess you might say. We specialize in whistleblower testimony, and the key to understand there is whistleblowers from above top secret, whereas WikiLeaks specializes in whistleblowers from below top secret and below. We go way above top secret. So that's a key difference. There is evidence. Julian did try to get in touch with us in the past. We've been in operation, as I said, for over 8 years. There does seem to be some reason to believe that we were perhaps somewhat inspirational for him creating WikiLeaks. The difference also between WikiLeaks and us is that WikiLeaks is all about documentation, and we are all about witness testimony. So that's another key difference. But nonetheless, as you can appreciate, this is a really cutting-edge area to be in. I know that whistleblowing and the word whistleblowers has become sort of, sort of the key term out in the mainstream now. And when we first started, I had to explain to people what a whistleblower was. That's how much we have sort of moved forward now. So we've got people like Edward Snowden, who is out there, who had top secret clearance, but not way above top secret. Although he is being let in on a few secrets, apparently. Some people don't know, they'd never go to our website. I've got a whole audience out there of over 90,000 people that subscribe to my YouTube channel, and they don't come to my website. So I do include a short just saying that, I have a blog, I write articles. It is important to realize also that whistleblowers right now, because of the crunch on people like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, they are less likely to come forward and go on camera. And that's obviously a tragedy for someone like me, for Camelot, and for the general public, because our whistleblowers are really our lifeline into the secrets behind the powers that be and what they're really doing, what they're planning for you, etc. So if they aren't feeling safe enough to come forward, that is a really crucial matter in terms of human freedom. So, and I will talk more about whistleblowers and their psychology shortly. This is my Time Travel in Other Worlds conference. Like I said, it was over a year ago. Key information, amazing stuff. Preston Nichols, David Wilcock, Richard Hoagland, and many more, including, as I said, Henry Deacon coming out on stage. I flew him in for the event, and so really key stuff. And by the way, I give a presentation there that's all about time travel and a unique whistleblower that came to me And the information that I talk about there, and I can talk about it here if I have time, is not out there anywhere else. So this is key. When you come across a whistleblower who's telling you something that is extremely unique, that's really important. Because sure, on the one hand, it could be complete bullocks, but on the other hand, it might actually be a sort of a window into something that people are simply not aware of. And in this case, it's all about longevity and the success that the Nazis actually have had in reverse engineering, regressing, or reverse aging, as they call it. And so that's really key, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But my presentation, I just talked to that whistleblower. He has not come forward under his own name. He's not come forward at all. He actually contacted me. I spent about 2 hours talking to him in a parking lot, and then he disappeared to actually write a book. And appears to be doing that, although I don't have any way of knowing whether he's actually going to be successful in getting that book out. So this is just the basic. These are some of the whistleblowers that we've had over the past years. At this point, we have nearly 300 videos on YouTube, interviews with people, and on top of that, I do a radio show weekly where I interview someone. So we're talking about a huge, group. For the last 4 years, I've had a radio show. So you're really talking about a massive amount of material, and I interview people on my radio show that don't reach the necessarily high standard that a face-to-face video interview does on Camelot. I sort of loosen the, I guess, the barrier, or whatever you want to call it, lower the barrier, and let people in who are simply researchers. Sometimes I have contactees. Sometimes there are people that really sound kind of crazy, actually. And I don't mind doing that every once in a while. I think that that keeping an open mind is key in this field. That the minute you think you know everything and you've got it all sewed up, you probably are just a lost cause. So I really would encourage people to stay sort of awake and aware at all times and know that this is an expanding story and that we need to all pay attention and keep our minds open. I have done roundtables, what are called Camelot roundtables, on the web, on our live stream channel. At the time I was charging small amounts of money for those. It became very difficult to continue them because we simply didn't have the people who wanted to pay, even $7 to listen to top experts and, experiencers, contactees, and whistleblowers compare notes in a roundtable environment. But I did a number of them before it stopped. I may do some more in the future, so just making you aware that that's something else that we also pioneered, was the idea that experts in this field, experiencers, contactees across all the lines should talk to each other, should compare notes. That's what we're stronger if we do that. And so that's why those kinds of things are really important. We always are seeking donations to keep our work going and to support what I'm doing here. And let me say this also about, I'm here in England. Obviously, I actually have an English boyfriend who's making it possible for me to come here more than once. And actually, I have spoken. I spoke at Somerset House. I was at the BASIS conference about a week or two ago. And I also spoke at, on my own dime, I came here and spoke at the Bilderberg conference, the Fringe event, and some of you may have been there and seen me. It's also available on YouTube if you want to see me talk in that kind of environment, along with Alex Jones and David Icke. So I was something of an anomaly in that world, simply being a very male-dominated field in some ways. This is, although more and more women are coming forward. So bottom line is, I'm just going to sort of take you through this very quickly. Now, I have sort of a huge trajectory that I'm going to go through. And as we move through, I'm going to talk about the black projects. I'm going to talk about the whistleblowers and their psychology, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to go down that road and And then at the end, I'm also going to talk about how to develop your own special abilities so that you can deal with this world that you're facing and move along with it. So first of all, how many people are aware of an organization called the White Hats that had a website, and it was called darkcabalblogspot.com, I believe. Anybody here? Okay, some of you. You will know that Lord Blackheath went to the floor of Parliament, House of Lords, I guess you call it, and he was fed information from this group. What this group is made up of are forensic financial investigators, ex-military and current military, people who are members of intelligence agencies. What they call themselves are White Hats. They're worldwide, they were worldwide. There's some evidence that they're still in operation, but they've kind of shut down their operations in many ways at this point, and I can talk more about that. But the bottom line is that they released these reports, and they're still available on the web, and they were digging into the financial background, following the money, as to what was going on here on planet Earth with the mortgage crisis that was, I know it happened here in England, it was in America, it was a huge scandal. I'm not sure how much further it went from there, although there were other things that went on like Iceland and so on. But they had documentation. And they began to uncover, as they went down the rabbit's hole, you might say, with regard to documentation. And there's another witness called Catherine Austin Fitz that I just interviewed in this regard. If you haven't seen my interview with her, she used to be the housing secretary under the Bush administration. So we're talking very mainstream individual. And she basically, she has a lot of insider access on a certain level, and was revealing, again, following the money. Where that trail leads is to black projects. And this is the evidence that you need, that we need, to validate the fact that we have a secret space program, that we have a rogue, in essence, a rogue civilization running parallel to ours, in which they are using technology that is very likely around 10,000 years in advance of where we are. That's what some whistleblowers are telling me. And let me also say that you see Pure Heart Investments. This is a shell organization that was a very, very big discovery for the White Hats. And in discovering that corporation, they were able to go even deeper. And at a certain point, what happened was that they brought me on board because they were going to release something about Pure Heart and the players behind the scene of Pure Heart. And they needed somebody who would explain to people, once they explained where the money was coming from, how it was getting there, et cetera, into the black projects, they needed somebody to explain the black projects themselves. And so they brought me on board. I went to a certain place and met with a couple of their members. And I spent the weekend writing a document, and that document became Black Projects Follow the Money. It's available on my website and has been, since this time, which is about, I think it might even be 2 years now. I'm not sure. I think it's around 2 years. It's crazy. But what happened is I wrote my report. They were about to release their very, very highest or deepest degree of information revealing the black projects, the link to Pure Heart, and the players. We're talking name and names, documentation, etc. When they got a phone call and basically were told to stand down. I elected not to stand down because I'm Camelot and that's kind of my attitude. So I went ahead and released my part of the report anyway, and that's what went on the web. They elected not to go forward. They were told, one thing they were told, is that they may, I don't know why this is, and it seems ludicrous to me, but there's this whole big deal around the dinar revaluation. It's a currency, and some people are very into it. They've invested all kinds of money into it. The Bushes and the various people in the high levels of administration have invested into it, but a lot of common people, so to speak, have invested into it as well, and other currencies. This is the most public revaluation of a currency that's ever probably happened in the history of the world. But what is going on with that is that it's being stopped. and it's repeatedly being stopped. And there are a lot of people that have lost their whole life savings investing into this thing. It's a crazy saga. But the bottom line is that the White Hats had invested in it. They were told they were part of an inside group that was getting sort of special access should that release happen. Again, because of their financial acumen, you might say, and also their intelligence, the levels to which they went, because their organization had white hats from quite high levels in at least the American government and here also in Britain. And so when they were told to stand down, they were told obviously their lives were threatened, their loved ones were threatened. But aside from that, they were told that it would also interfere with the release of the dinar. Now, they've been standing down now for almost 2 years since that time. They've been very quiet. One of their members is Paladin, and Paladin, that's his pen name. He was pretty vocal at one point coming out, and so was T-Man, another person in that group. T-Man has now been completely quiet. I actually had T-Man on a radio show talking about this dinar thing, Reval and so on. But it didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened. And I've got friends who call me up and think it's going to happen next week, and they call me every week and they think this. So it's really crazy. There are big sums of money attached to it. It's not worth anything right now, from what I understand. And the bottom line is that they had their lives threatened. They decided to live to fight another day. But at any rate, I brought Paladin on as a guest blog writer on my site. If you really know Camelot, you will see on the front page that I have several guest bloggers, what I call guest bloggers. And they are people with good backgrounds. Paladin is a forensic financial investigator. He has had some FBI training, and he talks about things like Bitcoin, and he talks occasionally about white hat matters. But he's very careful, and he's only released a few articles on my site so far. But I've actually done a live stream audio with him as well. So we have a live stream channel. So if you don't know that we have a YouTube channel, we have a live stream channel. And what I try to do is if I do a live interview, and I do a lot more of those nowadays with people, although they're not really whistleblowers per se, because the real whistleblowers, again, are afraid to come forward in person. They won't even come out on audio. What they do now is contact me sort of off the record, tell me information, and then I'm able to relate it. And so if you read my articles, you're getting intelligence that I'm getting from them, from sources. It's just the way it's going lately. It's kind of crazy. So,
what percentage of that do you think is disinformation?
Sorry?
What percentage would you say is disinformation?
You know, you can't really put a percentage on information coming in because it's so huge. I have people write me things. I have people walk up to me in places like this, give me information. I have meetings that are set up in which I spend time with people getting information. I have constant sources, which are still the whistleblowers that are on Camelot that I'm in touch with, that are also giving me information. So you're talking about information from many places, as well as my own constant investigations. I can also say that Veterans Today and Gordon Duff, who is the editor of Veterans Today, and a CIA agent, who's putting out disinfo, but he's also putting out some really important sort of nuggets of truth. And so that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a sort of a spectrum, and you basically have to develop a sense of what truth is, when it resonates, and that's a combination of your heart and your mind. And that is something unique to humans, I have to say. And this is something that gets into who we really are. And the bottom line is that you are made up of at least a genome of at least 12 ET races, that you are not, that you are a hybrid race, and that you are an experiment, that this is about the sixth seeding of humanity to this planet at this time, that there have been other seedings, but you are the first one that's going to move into what's called an ascension planet. And let me say that when I talk about stuff, what I'm doing is I'm taking from several places. One, I'm triangulating information the way a good, agent would do, a CIA agent or whoever it is. Basically, you take sources that are coming to you from completely three different directions that don't know each other, haven't compared notes, and they end up telling you the same thing. That's when you basically kind of red flag something and say, well, this is worth further investigation. So I do that. And we've always done it this way as well. The other is, and I am an intuitive, and this has served me very well in my life, which means that I do have an ability to take my heart and my head and kind of put them together, see what resonates, sense what resonates, and I have a pretty astute sense at this point. You can say I'm crazy or I don't or whatever, but it is proven true, and I'm actually blown away how often I'm proven right, even years in advance, by the information I get, taking it on board, understanding it, investigating it further, and then finding out that indeed that's where the trail goes. And then on top of it, so we do research. Then on top of it with the whistleblowers, we also will many times go to their places of work, go at least meeting people that have worked with them. Sometimes we will meet their families. We will spend time with them. We may even spend months going out to dinner with them, for example. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. It's not the kind of thing where I just go interview somebody and walk away. That's very rare. The other thing is that a lot of the whistleblowers also come to us. We don't go to them. What I mean by that is that even since the early days of Camelot, there was something working with us, let's say an unseen presence or presences, let's say an ET group backing us, whatever you want to say, to where things seem to happen magically almost. Doors seem to open. We ended up going to interview Boriska, who is a child who came at the age of 7 forward to his mother in a small village in Russia, and was basically telling people's fortunes along the road. When he met them, he would basically read them and tell them the truth about their lives. He became something of a phenomena in Russia many years ago, and when he was about 12, going on 13, we managed to make a trip to Russia to interview him. I still think that we're the only American journalists ever to do so. It was extraordinary that we managed to do so. We didn't have a lot of money, and we still don't. In fact, what happened in the early days of Camelot, just in case you're wondering how we're financed, as people do ask me, the bottom line is that my mother passed on. I had a very small inheritance. I used that for the first 2 years to finance our trips around the world to interview whistleblowers. I ran out of money, and then Bill's mother died. We had a little money from her having passed on, but basically that pretty much was not, in evidence after a while. And then we started asking for donations. So the bottom line is that the people that support us over these years are you. That's how we stay alive. And it's always been, will I be able to pay my rent at the end of this month or not? But I am a kind of a person, and I've always been like this. I have been a rebel since I was a kid. And I always had the philosophy that the only thing worth living for is to get the truth out. And initially, what I wanted to make was major sci-fi blockbusters revealing the truth, because I believe the truth is stranger than fiction. However, I reached a certain glass ceiling in Hollywood, and that's why I picked up a consumer-grade camcorder and ultimately connected with Bill Ryan, who became a webmaster, and I was the filmmaker. And we started to go around investigating and interviewing people from above top secret clearances, and that's really the beginning of Camelot. So we've had incredible luck over the years. We have been threatened. Our lives have been threatened. One of the interviews where my life was threatened was Pete Petersen. How many people have seen the Pete Petersen interview? Some. Okay, Dr. Pete Petersen, that's one of the most important Camelot interviews. It is probably about 6 hours long. So that means what happened was this man contacted us. He'd been in the secret space program, a kind of a Doctor Who, if you will, and also very involved in MK Ultra since he was a kid, really. But basically, he had been quiet all his life. He had been working, and then they kind of put him out to pasture, so to speak, in a certain out-of-the-way area. And he had a burning desire to share what he knew with someone. We were connected through a mutual third party. And initially what happened was it was myself, David Wilcock, we brought him along, and Bill Ryan. We spent the entire weekend with this man. He talked to us from the minute we arrived until 4 in the morning every night, all weekend long, and he never stopped. There were times when we were sitting around a table, he was talking and we were literally falling asleep, and he was still talking. Because you have to understand what it's like to hold secrets and to hold them your whole life. And he was in the secret space program for like 40 years of his life. So and he was a very outgoing and gregarious person. It just went against his grain to be keeping all these amazing secrets. So he talked until Monday morning, and then he said, okay, now you can turn the cameras on. Some of what I said, obviously, you can't talk about, and I won't. And if you ask me about it, I'm going to deny it. So I made clear that I could ask him about certain things, and he would deny it, and that would be okay. But that's exactly what I did in my portion. So if you watch the interview, or you have watched the interview, you will see that my section is the last section. And I'm the one who started to ask him certain things that are very kind of what you might say, leading questions or pointed questions, questions that where he gave a denial of a denial. And he says to me several times during that hour or 2 hours, however long it went, that if he was to answer me and tell me that I would die, or, so if I went and talked about it, I would die, and all this kind of thing. Well, sure enough, what happened is they were planning to kill me. Not him, but some people. And I can say they were stopped. And, I have been protected, and I know this. But it's worth noting that we have had other incidents. We constantly have weird things go on. One time, even recently when I was here in England, my laptop was totally toast by the time I got back to the States, having gone through the British, system here. I don't know what they did to it, but whatever it was no longer. They had to give me a brand new one. Luckily, I'd backed it all up, so it was cool. But this is the kind of thing that goes on. So, if we didn't have anything to say, if we were boring or just putting out the normal type of gibberish, then there would be no reason to threaten us. Whenever I do an interview, whenever I do a radio show, when certain things are talked about on Skype with somebody, I'm constantly interrupted and all kinds of craziness goes on. So this is just part and parcel of what goes on with Camelot. I can say that Pete Petersen did lose his wife. She died 1 year after our interview with him. You could say that was a coincidence. I hope it was. She was a lovely person. She did have some health problems, but this is also the way they control the people that go out off the reservation, so to speak, and basically kind of slap their wrists and tell them. Bob Dean, many people are fans of Command Sergeant Robert O. Dean, who I've interviewed a number of times. He has become an extremely close friend, lovely, lovely man. He basically was let into the Old Boys Network, okay? At one point, his daughter, I believe it is, committed suicide. We don't know why, we don't know if it's connected. This kind of thing goes on. Clifford Stone, you saw Clifford Stone here. He's an intuitive communicator. He was on the screen there. I interviewed him. That's another key, very important. He was present at Crash Retrievals many years ago, and that was his job, to be an intuitive communicator with any, of the ETs that were still living from craft such as that, etc. He had his, I believe it was his son, was killed. This is what goes on. We had a witness, Mr. X, who died very suddenly. He had a wife, he had a new baby. It was Christmas time. He was in the best of spirits. He was about to go on Coast to Coast with some information that he'd shared with us, because we interviewed him first. And he had worked in a vault for an aerospace company. And he spent 20 years keeping that secret and then revealed it to us. He didn't come out under his own name, but eventually he did start to feel that he was a little safer. Many years had passed. He had come forward to do an audio interview with us at a conference called the Crash Retrieval Conference in November of that year. And then in December, he woke up one night with some kind of problem in the middle of the night. His wife rushed him to the hospital, and by 12 noon he was dead. Now, we don't know if these are coincidences, but I can say that this is a very serious subject. I know it gets a lot of giggle factor around it. I know that people think that Simon Parkes may have his mind, altered or whatever. But I can tell you that I sat opposite him and stared directly into his eyes doing that interview. And that individual who believes he's basically in a human in a praying mantis in a human body is unequivocally a master magician for one thing, which means black. He's been trained in the black magician arts. But on top of it, he is trying to do the right thing, but he is very, very, very serious, and he is being let in on some very important secrets. So take it or lose it, or take it or leave it, but this is what we're really talking about. Richard Allen Miller, a physicist, brilliant, brilliant man, worked for the Secret Space Program for a very long time. Basically kind of a Timothy Leary-like character. He is a physicist, but he became interested in consciousness. And he began to train special forces in things like ESP, telepathy, to make them better soldiers. That was his job in the military, or at least one of them. And eventually he freaked out, like sort of a Timothy Leary kind of like character. Couldn't handle the job, couldn't handle the contradictions, and left the reservation, so to speak. He went to the Pacific Northwest. He started to study herbology. He became a master herbologist, as well as a farmer, organic farmer, etc. And then what he did to make money was to collect pine cones. And so he would collect truckloads of pine cones from a place that has tons of forests in the Pacific Northwest, and made enough money to live on, etc. So this man has now been brought, I interviewed him, but he's been brought back into, he is now working for Navy Intel. He will tell you flatly that he's been given what he calls a get out of jail free card. What he means by that is that he's been told that if things go south here, that he can go to Mars and be, have a ticket to one of the underground bases there. So obviously we're talking about rule by secrecy. That is the way they operate. This is key. And when you watch the news, it's very important to understand that as you watch news reports, to take this information and this knowledge and apply it to analyzing what they're really trying to tell you. That all the lies and disinfo that they're telling you on mainstream news, because all the mainstream journalists are basically have bought into the matrix. They're basically being paid to do a job, and they are they're having a difficult time of it, because you can appreciate that when you're a journalist, such as the Rolling Stone Michael Hastings, many of you will know that name. You will know that he was killed. You will know that he embedded himself with I guess it was McChrystal, I think it was his name, the general. He wrote a book all about his embedding in the war in Afghanistan with this particular general. I did a little research on that general, and I found out that before he was head of a platoon, or whatever you call these things in the military in Afghanistan, he was working in black projects. So it's very highly likely that Michael Hastings stumbled on some very interesting information. We do know that his engine in a Mercedes hit some kind of, I don't know if it was the curb or the tree, but something about a tree. And it was basically shot with a missile, is what we have heard back channel from several different unrelated witnesses. But the engine of the Mercedes leapt out of the car. I mean, this kind of stuff just, you know, and he was driving like 5 miles an hour or something. I mean, it's just crazy. So, so he was taken out, and that was also related to probably the information he was communicating apparently even the night before with Edward Snowden, for what it's worth. This is what goes on. I mean, you can do your own research. I assume if you're here that it's very likely that you are doing your own research. But I want to encourage you to continue to do so. Okay, so we're talking about the secret space program. We're talking about Gary McKinnon, who stumbled on an interstellar space fleet patrolling the galaxy called Solar Warden. I can tell you that Henry Deacon Arthur Neumann talked about Solar Warden. He was not the first person to come forward talking about it, although he didn't seem to know that other people had, because he didn't do a lot of surfing of the net, apparently. But nonetheless, that was the one part of his testimony. And his testimony, originally, he wouldn't come out under his own name. He only did so later, and I'll explain how that happened. But the bottom line is that he basically wanted us to remove everything he said about Solar Warden from his testimony, and we refused. This was like, I don't know, 5 years after the fact. It had been on our website for 5 years. There was no reason, I mean, it was ludicrous to do so, but we did make a concession, and what I did was, I said, you know, I changed in the writing, I say, this statement of, you know, this from Henry Deacon, he has asked to have us removed. We've now decided, you know, we've refused to do so, but it was all about Solar Warden. So what does that tell you? It tells you that someone put pressure on him not to be talking about Solar Warden. Why? Because that's a very key element of the secret space program. It's all about a protective force, according to Mark Richards, Captain Mark Richards. And this is what Gary McKinnon stumbled on. So he stumbled on lists of fleet-to-fleet transfers of non-terrestrial officers, lists, names, we're talking. And this basically is what he appears to have come across. Now, I know that Gary McKinnon was you know, sort of let off charges. He didn't get renditioned to the U.S. I know that Janice McKinnon, Janice Sharp, his mother, I interviewed her as well on Camelot, in case you don't know that. And obviously, my interview with Gary McKinnon just recently was broadcast over, yeah, I think it's the Ancient Aliens. It's called Hangar One or something, a TV show that airs in the United States, and I think it's also on YouTube now. So they did pay me for some of my footage. Basically, I got to him before almost anyone else did, and I happen to feel that it's the best, sort of most authentic testimony you're going to get from Gary McKinnon from those days. After that, he was gotten to in many ways. Okay, so let's see, Rich Dolan and the UFOs and National Security State. He's written, I think, 2 or 3 volumes now. Incredible, basically a litany of UFO encounters worldwide, his books. He speaks on the circuit. He's extremely well respected. He was an Oxford scholar. You know, he was supposed to go to Oxford at one point, offered that. I guess you call it, I think it was Oxford finalist or something like that. And history major and so on and so forth. He's a brilliant guy. I can tell you that if you want evidence to show friends and family where the nuts and bolts are of the UFO sightings, how they happened, the police officers, the airline pilots, all, you know, the ex-military individuals, the huge numbers of crowds that have seen these things. In other words, people that come to you and say, oh, there's no such thing as UFOs. I can tell you that these volumes are quite thick. They're very detailed. He's a crack investigator, so that's something to be aware of. He also coined the phrase rogue civilization. He, like Camelot, has many insider sources. They're all aware of him. He used to get stopped at airports and searched all the time. I don't know if it's still happening to him. Actually, one more thing. See the octopus this is actually the NRO emblem. But the bottom line is that that octopus, this is what we call basically the secret space program and the tentacles of the black projects that feed into that program that is all about the black projects and following the money. And it is also known as the octopus. Now, there is a journalist called Danny Casolero, and he was investigating the money. A lot of people don't know this about Danny. He was suicided. They killed him. He was hot on the trail of the octopus, and there have been several books written about him and the saga. I can tell you that he had gotten to the very top levels of where the money is coming from. We're talking very, very high up in the government and what's really going on. In other words, we're talking about an orchestrated downturn in your economy here in Britain, in the United States, in the world economy, bringing in, a one world government, etc. And it can all be traced through what's happening with the money.
Gold chain round your neck, nothing to me. Diamonds in your teeth, nothing to me. You could be rolling 22s, nothing to me. Down with the truth, now that's something to me. Gold chain round your neck, nothing to me. Diamonds in your teeth, nothing to me. You could be rolling 22s, nothing to me. Down with the truth, now that's something to me.
I'm not here to follow false idols. This is my lane, so it's my recital. I'm giving you straight truth, not the Bible. I stand here alone, that's the first truth, it's vital. My other side's in peace, a bitch, it's spiteful. Female, feminine, delightful.